Hydaelyn and Zodiark. For thousands of years, Eorzea has experienced a repeated cycle of devastation, umbral eras, and prosperity, astral eras. Recent revelations have shown that this may be the result of a deep-seated conflict between the will of light, Hydaelyn, and the will of darkness, Zodiac. The Eras. Eorzea has been defined by its periods of growth and prosperity, wherein civilizations have risen and thrived until being brought down by terrible disasters known as calamities, which, in turn, bring upon ages of darkness, known as umbral eras. The most recent calamity occurred a mere 5 years past, and constituted a night of destruction, which ushered in a period of chaos and uncertainty, known as the Seventh Umbral Era. This calamity was a result of the fall of Hydaelyn's lesser moon Dalamud in the 1572nd year of the Sixth Astral Era. Upon the satellite's arrival above the Cartano Flats in central Eorzea, it split apart, revealing the elder primal Bahamut, who, in a fit of inchoate anger, laid waste to anything and everything around him. Up until Dalamud's fall, many Sixth Astral Era scholars convinced themselves that the fact that there had already been 6 calamities, each representing one of the 6 elements, was proof that there could not be a 7th, and that the 6th Astral Era would last indefinitely. However, subsequent study of Garlean Empire legatus Nail Van Darnas's Meteor Project would eventually lead these scholars to the conclusion that the attack by Bahamut was indeed a calamity, though not one represented by any one element, but rather consisting of all the elements charged astrally. Following much deliberation between the scholars and the ruling parties of each of the 4 Eorzean city-states, the consensus was finally made to deem the years following Bahamut's advent the 7th Umbral Era. Aseans. Throughout Eorzean history, whether it be in folklore or myth, there has been mention of dark, shadowless figures known as Aseans, who, with their twisted words, would incite strife between peoples, most recently teaching the beast tribes of Eorzea how to summon primals, and essentially igniting a war spanning multiple continents. According to recent research by the Scions of the Seventh Dawn, there is proof that the calamities, once believed to be natural occurrences, were actually triggered by the crooked schemings of the Aseans, in an attempt to bring about a phenomenon known as the rejoining, a form of dimensional compression desired by their deity, Zodiark. Dimensional compression. But what is dimensional compression? The students of Baldessian and Scions of the Seventh Dawn have both allocated resources into learning more about the phenomenon. Their findings are as follows. Deep within the ethereal sea, light and darkness wage a never-ending war against each other. Equal in strength, their battles end in standstills, maintaining balance in the world. However, there was a period when the strength of darkness grew, disrupting this balance. From within the Mother Crystal, the will of light, Hydaelyn, passed judgment that darkness should be physically excised from the planet, and cast the will of darkness, Zodiark, into space, where it became the moon. However, in doing so, Hydaelyn tore the very dimensional fabric, creating a rift which spawned forth 13 mirror images, which have since evolved separately from the original. This hypothesis continues by stating that of the 14 parallel dimensions, the original upon which Eorzea exists, 7 have already faded into oblivion at the hands of the Aseans, who, from the safety of Eorzea, work to topple the walls between dimensions, causing them to collapse in on themselves. Their purpose? To regather the ether distributed among the 13 mirrored planes and concentrate it back to the original, where it can be used to wake the exiled Zodiac and restore him to his rightful place back within Hydaelyn. This process, compressing 14 dimensions back into one, is what the Aseans refer to as the Ardor, and it most certainly spells destruction of life on Hydaelyn as we know it. The Warriors of Light. In the moons before the calamity struck and ushered in the 7th Umbral Era, Eorzea saw the rise of unlikely heroes who took up their blades to stave off impending doom. However, despite their countless deeds, the names and faces of these brave men and women have been mysteriously erased from the minds of Eorzeans, all that remains being a searing white brilliance that blinds us from memories that should exist. These shades have since been dubbed the Warriors of Light, and while their identities may never be fully known by most, their deeds will live on in legend for all eternity. The Echo. So, who were these Warriors of Light who led Eorzea back from the precipice of destruction? The study of ancient documents, from musty tomes to wall carvings, shows us they are not unique to the 6th Astral Era, and that similar heroes have appeared before every calamity to ensure mankind endures. For example, before the Great Flood, which marked the end of the 5th Astral Era, legend tells us of 12 Archons who descended on Eorzea to warn its denizens of the rising waters. There are also tales from the Near East, which follow the exploits of great warriors known as the Zodiac Braves, warriors whose appearance also happens to coincide with a past calamity. What, then, ties these legendary figures with the Warriors of Light who emerged but 5 summers past? One answer might be the Mother Crystal, and the power she is hypothesized as providing to those of her choosing. Eorzean myth is full of tales of heroes who have been granted seemingly otherworldly powers. While much of this can be attributed to embellishments by bards looking to add spice to their honeyed tales of sword and sorcery, might it be that these tales also speak some truth, as the powers which they describe are often similar to ones documented by the Scions of the 7th Dawn, as being experienced by those few who have had contact with Hydaelyn. This power, known as the Echo, comes in many forms, several of which are listed here. The power to transcend words. For those blessed with the power to transcend words, language no longer poses a barrier to intercultural communication. Voiced utterances fade and are replaced by an internal understanding of another's intentions. Conversely, words spoken by one with this power are immediately understood by all, without need of linguistic interpretation. The power to transcend time. Those granted with this form of the Echo can mentally travel back in time to witness occurrences experienced by another. It was originally thought that proximity with the memory holder was necessary for transcession. However, it has recently been discovered that residual mnemonic ether lingering in a location can also trigger these third-person flashbacks. The power to transcend worlds. Though rare, there have also been cases reported of individuals who, through the manifestation of Hydaelyn's very light, can walk the ethereal plane and communicate directly with the planet herself. The Blessing of Light. If recollections of self-proclaimed heroes are to be believed, Hydaelyn will often attempt to make contact with those who possess the Echo, sometimes in the form of a voice, other times in the form of a vision, and still other times in the form of enhanced senses or protective barriers to shield against powerful magics. These boons have been called blessings of light, yet, despite their frequency, little is known about them. However, it is assumed that many of the miracles which appear in myth and legend are actually instances of Hydaelyn bestowing her blessing upon an individual. Next chapter, The 12.